when we're not all doing the when we don't actually talk about the COVID stuff anymore. That seems to be basically all, like, in some looseness, some strong. However, it turns out, it seems to be something that we definitely, that the world at large is heavily talking about. So
We're going to be talking about this forever, right? Even when it's gone, we're going to be talking about it for years after the fact. It's, there's probably going to be one of those congressional committee things, like with
yeah,
the JFK assassination, that, 10 years from now, we'll finally find out what went right and what went wrong. So, nope, the coronavirus and COVID is here to stay. It's just a matter of to what degree it's here.
yeah, for sure. I honestly, like, how long is that gonna, like, how long is it gonna last in the actual as far as being an actual viral threat people care about? Who knows? But the after effects of, we're all getting screwed. The government's wanting to do everything. That's gonna be for a while. So it is what it is. Well, let me see.
We are live, by the
We
way, with
are.
Live Free and Rant, episode 8. We've titled this of Censorship and Karens. I'm Chris Maidment. How you doing, Joel?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm just checking 1.5 million little notifications and streams just to make sure that it is actually working. Of course, this is all experimental technology. We're all
Well, our producers out in the back room have really got this nailed down for us. There's no worry about that. The great production team here of, Joel. So,
yes, and so there's always that. Oh god, I gotta like run around and check everything, make sure everything's working. Is it not streaming? Why is it not streaming? Or that kind of stuff. Which it may not be. Oh, there it is. And that's the problem. And by the way, for all you people that just wonder about rolling starts, like why aren't you just like, boom, we're live. Hey guys, like, it's because everything seems to work at different rates. So, for example, if you can't just hit record and go, it all starts live. No, it's you hit it and then like 10, 20, 30 seconds later, like YouTube kicks in and then it's like all this other one, and then you have to juggle all the live chats and stuff. And if you do too much of all this stuff, then as it turns out, yeah, then it crashes your computer and then it all goes down the toilet, and that sucks.
yeah, the good news is we don't really care about the live chats because we don't care what anybody else thinks, right? We just do this to hear ourselves talk.
Oh, I do. I absolutely care. And if it is, if you are watching live on Float, FLOTE, then I do care about your live chats. You know why? Because you can send super chats to me. You can actually throw me some coin, some digital coin, and then the little special thingy pops up and just says, hey, this is a highlighted comment, which is pretty good. I mean, it's kind of like one of those economic type things that, pops up where people love feedback, but they don't like to be trolled. So if you add a toll, like for example, you say, I only listen to the super chats, or in platforms like Twitch, which is some crypto Twitter thingy, you can actually set something called the troll toll, which, like, if you don't like someone, you can make them pay you $20 just to tweet at you. And well, first off, what that does is it disincentivizes people that you don't like tweeting, like trying to communicate with you. But then it also makes you, if you really want to get through to them, even if it's for a frivolous reason, it really makes it to where it's like, now you're actually going to pay attention to the trolls as opposed to not, if they are indeed trolls. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, most of that I have no idea what you're talking about. The crypto thing is still way above my head for the most part. I joined library, so I publish to library now, and I get like LBCs, which are
Yeah.
library coins, I guess.
Yeah. Library
And I
credits
feel like a rich
specifically.
person because I have hundreds of them, and it turns out it's worth like 4 cents. But whatever.
Yeah, although it is
I'll
fun.
take my 4 cents for streaming.
It is funny because the value of that is quadrupled since I started in March. So, I'm like still not rich, but whatever. Anyway, library seems like a great jumping off point because there's this whole tar rate thing going around You want to fill the folks in on what that whole thing is about?
Yeah. So remember that hashtag Me Too movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where, what's his name there? Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court was being accused of sexual assault,
Mm-hmm.
as were numerous people in Hollywood. And Hollywood was kind of flushing itself down the toilet, which is completely deserved.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody was coming out with these, believe all women. Every accusation deserves to be heard and taken seriously, which I agree with. Every accusation does deserve to be heard and taken seriously, and it needs to be investigated and fully vetted. Apparently, unless you're a Democrat, and that's not me saying that, that's apparently the world at large, right? So this woman, Tara Reid, in 1993, accused Joe Biden, who at the time was a U.S. senator, of inappropriate sexual conduct. And according to her, the way he looked at her and talked to her and maybe touched her, I'm trying to find it in the article I have up on my page right now, was very inappropriate, made her very uncomfortable. She talked to people about it at the time. She talked to her neighbor, who 2 hours ago, this Business Insider story came out saying that her neighbor at the time has gone on the record supporting her allegations. And her mother called into CNN's Larry King Live in 1993 to talk about her daughter's problems with a prominent senator. So all of this is, when they look at these claims of anybody else making these accusations, they go back to the time that it happened, and they see if there's any corroborating evidence. Like, did you talk to anybody about it when it happened? Because that's one of the big, I guess, telltale signs of whether somebody is being truthful or not, or if they're just making it up a couple decades later. Because this was 27 years ago now.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, creepy things done by politicians are not that uncommon, especially Mr. Creepy Joe Biden, the Democratic frontrunner, who now it seems like that seems to be the least interesting thing about him these days. It seems like the most interesting thing is, oh, this guy doesn't have his head screwed on straight, and he probably is not mentally fit to be driving, much less being the president. But that's a whole different conversation. He has a long and storied history of basically doing stuff that's really creeps people out. Unwanted physical contact, sniffing. Oh, the sniffing. Just so much sniffing. And just children, women, whatever, just being very, very much of a creep. And now, of course, the Tara Reid thing is an example of what could clearly be, sexual harassment, sexual assault, depending on where you want to define that. But, it's a serious case, and it's from back in the day. It's not something that, oh, by the way, this creepy old weird guy that's now running for president, I have a political motivation to get him out of here. I'm going to just say I got whatever. It's like, no, back in the day, and those things always tend to surface. But here's the thing. First off, Alyssa Milano was not kind of buying it, not buying the whole believe all women thing, which is very counter to what was being said before. Wasn't Lady Gaga going to do a PSA, anti-sexual harassment PSA with Joe Biden? And there's like a bunch of instances where his political allies have sort of circled the wagons around, this weird behavior. And as part of that, way back in the day, Tara Reid was, I believe it was her mother was on Larry King Live, and basically talking about this whole thing, like, what should I do? And, again, which is a great example of this was a problem back then, and people were trying to do something about it back then. Now, that seems to have been scrubbed from Larry King Live. Now you can't really find the episode there anymore. And thankfully, we have decentralized alternatives and content platforms for that. Let me just play a video here, and courtesy of Jeremy Kaufman, the CEO of Library, LBRY. And let me just hit this, and see you in a couple minutes.
So former staffer of Joe Biden, Tara Reade, is accusing him of sexual assault. Yesterday, it came out that her mother had evidently called in to Larry King Live in 1993. Now, every episode of Larry King Live, at least as of yesterday, was available on Google Play. If you went on to Google Play, there was one episode of Larry King Live missing. And it was that episode. It was the only one missing. Okay? And this is well documented. We have screenshots of this. Google has now simply taken the entire season down, just to make it a little bit less obvious, I guess, what's going on, or to deflect this criticism. Look, I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or what you believe or how you feel about this allegation. This is chilling and disturbing. It is not okay. And it shows more than ever why we absolutely cannot trust our democracy and our society to the major media organizations and to big tech. We just cannot. This story is only just breaking. There's one story of it up on Fox News. I'm sure there will be more. To help ensure that the truth is not lost, I'm offering $1,000 in LBC for someone to publish the episode to library.tv or to the Library Network, because I believe it is in the public interest, and I believe it is fair use that this information be preserved. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah. That was, it's pretty telling. So the whole Biden being a creep thing is something that I kind of just, assume that all politicians, especially someone like that, are probably doing some crazy stuff like that. And I kind of keep that in the background. It's I don't really care about the day-to-day, this and that, all that kind of stuff. I know that the guy is absolutely, I'm not voting for him. I'm not voting for the other guy either. But when now you start seeing the wagon circling around this sort of thing, trying to censor old bits of truth just to push this guy across the finish line, I start to get pretty concerned. And not so much concerned, but very paying attention to what we all us crazy people with our conspiracy theories and such seem to think, which is there is a kind of a group of people trying to control the world, and they're trying to do whatever they can to hold on to that control. And there you go. They're circling the wagons, trying to keep the truth from coming out that would derail their favorite candidate. And thankfully, it's able to be. The interview in question was republished on Library, the decentralized platform, many, many times now since then, and it's all up there. And you can't take it down, and there you go. You can't keep the truth down, but you can keep it off of YouTube.
Yeah, one of the great things about the time we live in now is how decentralized information actually can be, and the ability to have information in so many different places, especially on these decentralized platforms such as Library and other ones. The central control of information, 20 years ago, it was the 3 news channels, right? And they owned all the information, and you just had to trust that they were reporting it to you right. And there wasn't, the internet wasn't as mainstream as it is now, and Google didn't exist, and you couldn't just go find information, or DuckDuckGo for those of you that don't use Google anymore, because it's kind of, I guess, lived past its peak. And the censorship that's going on with, YouTube and, Google, for example, what he was talking about is the Google Play account, or the Google Play, whatever it is, library was deleted. That whole
the podcast, the episode of the Larry King show.
So, but now we have these decentralized, and information can just be spread so far and so wide and so fast. And it's a good thing and a bad thing, because we're a lot more prone to confirmation bias now, I think. Me seeing that, I go, oh, well, Google's corrupt. Of course they did that. there very well may be some innocent explanation. I doubt it, but there could be, right? But you read an article on, or how many times have you clicked on a clickbait headline? I've kind of trained myself to not do it anymore, although I used to do it all the time. Is you click on these clickbait headlines because it says something that you want it to say. Yeah. And then you read this story that ends up being, complete garbage.
You'll never believe what Hillary Clinton said about the U.S. Constitution. Are Muslims taking over? Oh, it's like no, dude. Oh, it's just a bunch of drivel. Yeah, I know that. It can get pretty bad, but the thing is, we're kind of we're refocusing. We're becoming more habituated to this whole thing, and so therefore, being able to discern fake from real information is becoming a lot easier. Now, I don't care what Facebook says, because Facebook likes to tell me that the spicy memes I post are not the truth, and I don't have time for that kind of negativity in my life. They fact check memes, and it's like, well, not really true. Warning, are you sure you want to be exposed to this collection of cartoon drawings and some crappy text? Are you sure this is safe? It's like, and that's the thing is with YouTube as well. It's not just, YouTube is specifically, the CEO has specifically said that they will remove all content that contradicts the World Health Organization. Just that clear. Basically, if you say something that's inconsistent to what they say, they're just going to delete it off YouTube. You have no free speech on that subject. It's been very clearly stated. Now, what's especially funny is the World Health Organization has contradicted itself a few times over the course of the last few weeks because new information comes out and things like that. So essentially, YouTube decides what you can and cannot consume. And with Facebook doing that too, and then now the Google Play Store removing the Larry King Live interview and more, it's starting to become pretty clear that this whole censorship thing is something that people are actually doing in a very blatant way.
Yes. As far as Google and YouTube and those platforms go, I'm a big fan of, letting private corporations run their businesses the way they see fit. Mm-hmm. And if they want, the problem becomes, right, and John DePietro will yell at me later for this, is I guess there's a difference between being a platform and being a publisher. Mm-hmm. And if you're selectively weeding out certain information, that makes you more of a publisher than a platform. Whereas Library, you can post whatever you want. Library takes no credit for what you post or what you say, but it stays. So they're not selectively weeding out information. Mm-hmm. You could probably start drawing lines in the middle, in between somewhere. Like if you're posting harmful information, in calls to violence and stuff like that, removing that probably doesn't make you a publisher. But if you start removing certain information just because it goes against your worldview, then that turns you into a publisher instead of. So there's a lot. I don't know if I have that exactly right, but if Google wants to run their company that way, then go ahead. You're just going to end up losing a large chunk of your subscriber base.
Yeah.
To platforms such as Library and the others, which is lbry.tv. For those of you watching this video, will be up there later. Because it's completely decentralized and there is no way to delete content unless the author deletes it. Do I have that right?
Yeah, basically. Even if the author deletes it, someone else could still probably share it all over the place. But it's, a tough technical process, and there's a bunch of layers as to how that would work. So the website, lbry.tv, has the capacity to basically not show certain things. So it has they have a very strong anti-censorship ethos, but they have a capacity to essentially do what YouTube did in terms of what can you see on the actual website, although they don't. Now, everything that's uploaded there is also completely, it's referenced on the Library blockchain. It's stored on a decentralized, kind of like a BitTorrent type client, and it's also it's all there. And so if the government takes down or compels Library.tv to do something, you could still download the Library client, which is just a program that just looks exactly like the site. and still works. And so you can't shut that down. And if for some reason, like the coders decide to start, or are coerced into starting to put weird little filtering mechanisms and stuff into the actual software, it's open source, so anyone can just take that, change a few lines of code, and just make their own version of the client, and then everyone still uses it. It's just like so hard to stamp out. And that's going to become increasingly, stuff like that's going to become increasingly necessary in this world now, because we've seen that a big segment of the world has united around keeping people in their homes and telling them if they can't do business or not, and telling them what they can do and arresting them if they go to the beach. So the rest of the world is mostly like a victim to that. There are some people that are starting to rise up again. If you didn't watch last week's podcast, Rise Up, you need to do that. But a lot of people are rising up against that. But in a case where you have a war of sorts going on, some kind of a conflict between two sides vying for dominance, you absolutely cannot trust one of those sides, either of those sides, to properly give information. So yeah, you absolutely cannot be stuck on things like YouTube and Facebook and things like that and just hope that you're going to get the truth, because you're not. And not only you're not going to get the truth, but that is going to result in making you less free and, possibly put your life and your business's life in danger. So decentralize. Yeah. Where do we go from there? Well, I know where to go. Karen boom. It's one of my favorite subjects in a way, because it's one of the most evil, vile things you can be as a human being is to be a snitch. And it was specifically, I mean, listen, if you see something that's hurting other people and you cannot take care of it yourself, and then you tell someone who can take care of you, okay, I understand that. But if someone's living their peaceful life and then you just cannot stand it, so you go call someone like the cops and visit real world consequences on just some neighbor minding their own business, you are a terrible human being, in my most humble of opinions. And now that basically everything is illegal in some way or shape or form, even more than before somehow, now we have a veritable boom of Karens going on.
Yeah, we've talked about the Karen boom. This is probably the third or fourth week in a row that we've talked about the rise of Karens. Was it one of our podcasts titled "The Rise of the Karen"? I don't remember.
Could have been.
Anyways, when you get these busybodies, men and women of all different stripes, you don't have to be a woman to be a Karen. We've already talked about that. But when you get these people that are you start snitching on your neighbors for going for a walk or playing tennis, and if you're calling the police or the authorities of whatever you're supposed to do in your local area, I agree with you. You're a terrible person. Just mind your own business, right? Like, stay. And we've talked about this too. If you're that afraid of your shadow, then just stay inside and lock yourself in a closet for the next 18 months until you can go get this vaccine that's probably not going to work, because this virus is more like the flu than they originally thought. Just leave everybody else alone.
Yeah.
What if I'm going for a walk or riding a bike or playing tennis or I'm on the beach or I'm surfing, and we can talk about this after, out in Rye, New Hampshire, the police chief is starting to arrest surfers, I guess, or warning them that he's going to. You just stay in your house, leave other people alone, mind your own business.
Yeah, I mean,
the Karens frustrate me to no end.
And also you can't really surf that close to each other to where you're at risk, but that's a different story. Now, the thing is, the police and government and things like that are capable of all kinds of nasty, horrible things, but there's so few of them compared to the people that you can get away with a lot of types of things usually. Like, even all your state's under complete lockdown, whatever, and okay, fine, go out, sneak out for a walk when you want. No one's going to get you. Probably. Who knows? Again, I'm not endorsing, I'm not telling you what to do. Just think it out loud. Now, the presence of having a Karen around means that now all their numbers of eyes and ears are multiplied, And it just basically like it's an entirely hostile world out there now with a bunch of people looking to, stick the cops on you for doing something that doesn't hurt anyone. And I'm going to go to one of these stories in just a second. But first, as a reminder, right up here is the subscribe button. Make sure you subscribe. On that side is a Patreon button. Make sure you throw a few dirty fiat dollars. And right over here is the crypto donation thing. Make sure if you have any cryptocurrencies and you like what we're doing, you throw some money that way. And of course, if you happen to be watching on Float, Flote, or flote.app, float.app, then you can get in a little live chat and then you can throw some super chats in. But anyway, now on to the first big story of this. Here we go. Texas cops use undercover sting operation to arrest women offering salon services at their homes.
Yeah, I saw. So one of my Facebook friends posted this earlier today, and said, thank goodness Texas has solved every other crime in the state that they're able to go after these little petty criminals. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me of a story about, I think it was this winter maybe, mm-hmm. where the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in Florida, not New Hampshire,
thankfully,
was setting up sting operations. And this was pre-coronavirus and all that, right? They were setting up sting operations to get those dreaded unlicensed handymen off the streets because, heaven forbid somebody tries to paint Granny's house and they don't have a permission slip from the government to be able to paint Granny's house. So this kind of, it tells the same kind of story, but now of course this is because of the coronavirus, which makes it, even worse or in a lot of ways. But can you imagine that you do, what are these people called, Joel? You talked about them.
Estheticians.
Thank you. I can't say that word for some reason. So you have this salon where you do nails and pedicures, manicures, the whole nine. And all of a sudden the government came in and forcibly closed your business. And now you have no income and you have no way to put food on the table. And you've been waiting weeks for unemployment to come through because the government can't do anything efficiently. And so you're starving. You have no money, you have no food. So you just decide to keep working from the safety of your own home, giving people the option of whether or not they want to come to you. And I assume these people are taking safety precautions, right? They're not just going to have people coming into their house that they, I'm sure they're sanitizing and doing whatever they feel comfortable with and their clients feel comfortable with. But somehow,
especially because it's their house.
Job, I'm going to shut you down. Right. It's your house. That's where your family lives.
Yeah. You don't want to kill off your family. Yeah. And then you have a sting operation. I don't like the concept of sting operations at all, to be honest. Like, I'm trying to think of a few cases where, like, I don't even know if it's like, do you entrap someone, a bounty hunter who kills people for hire, if you do a sting operation them? Like, even then, it's just like, it's almost like entrapment, right? It's just like, what are you even going to do? Sting? Basically, child trafficking is like the one case for moral sting operations. Or,
well, anything to do with children, right? So, like, if you want to pose, so if you want to pose as a 14-year-old girl in your police department, you're charged with the child wellness, whatever bureau, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to pose as a 14-year-old girl and troll all these dirty internet sites, and then it's not really entrapment because those clowns are out there looking for a 14-year-old girl, right?
Yeah, possibly. Or it could
possibly.
It could be a situation like, let's just say, like, do you remember Kyle Tasker? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how if he's looking for a 14-year-old. With it ended up being, I don't know if he's looking for that age bracket specifically. But then there was somebody else, Cody Wilson.
But the cops, when they're talking with the people, they make it very clear what their age is, right? So, first of all, children can't consent to anything, right? If you're a child, you can't consent. Your brain's not fully formed, whatever. If we want to argue about what age makes you a child, that's a different discussion.
That's a topic for Ian
day.
Freeman. Sorry, let's keep going. Let's keep going.
Way to derail the show. But if you're committing crimes against, so first of all, pedophilia should be punishable by death, right?
Yeah,
if you commit an act of pedophilia against a child, you're pretty much the lowest of the low. And I mean, you're going to get taken care of in prison anyways, because even in prison, they don't like pedophiles.
Yeah, they seem to understand. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, yeah, but so that's what sting operations should be about: is stopping people who are killers, who are thieves, and who are rapists. If you manage to catch that stuff, that's a viable thing for a sting operation, right? If you find, oh, someone robbed, someone went and like stole all the copper wiring out of your factory or whatever, and you start finding, you want to say, hey, I'm looking to buy you pose as someone trying to buy a bunch of stolen copper, and then you get it, you're like, haha, I got you, you're the guy who got stole from the guy's factory. All right, fine, that works. Or
yeah, because that crime had a victim,
yes,
right? So the common theme about your three situations is all three of those crimes have victims.
Yeah, now in the vast majority of cases, painting someone's nails does not create a victim. There is a possibility you cause irreparable harm by just how disgustingly terrible of a job you do at that, but it's probably not going to happen. And so that's the thing is, first off, we have people live lives they're doing well. Then this whole virus thing hits, and then their lives get shut down. Then people start pushing back against that kind of stuff, either rising up or in like covert counter economics, just doing their own business stuff on the side without telling anyone, just like, hush hush, I'll cut your hair for you, let's go in, And then you have the Karens and the Stings coming in to try to fight against that. But I do love the human spirit and the fact that it is kind of like people are doing whatever they want, even in a horrible, horrible place known as the United Kingdom. Sorry. I like the UK. I've been there a few times. It's a fun place. I like the English people and the Welsh people, and then all the Scottish people and all them. But
hey, what about the Irish people? Come on, Joel.
Yeah, Northern Irish.
Don't leave out my people.
Northern Irish is part of the UK still, but I would call Ireland a separate thing, and so would they. So that was a little off track, but it's been pretty Orwellian, the crackdowns against people trying to live over there. Now, that doesn't stop. The one thing there's two things that Brits as a whole care about more than listening to the nanny state, and that is
going to the
violence
pub
and alcohol. And here we go. So, part of that got cut off, but secret knock pubs staying open spark fury as drinkers defy coronavirus knockdown. Yeah, so
about 100 years ago. So the 20s have become the 20s again, right?
Yeah.
Because 100 years ago, when the United States passed the constitutional amendment to ban alcohol, the sale, consumption, possession, and manufacture of alcohol, a bunch of speakeasies opened up across the country, especially like New York City, stuff like that, right? So now it's kind of the 20s have become the 20s again. It's kind of before the virus, we had it was booming stock market, all the other things, and now it's actually like, okay, we're in a depression. The bars are closed. Nobody can go out to drink.
Yeah.
But at least, I mean, good for the the Brits over there. Going to those speakeasies.
Yeah, and that's imagine going to the pub, not just drinking, but specifically going to the pub is probably one of the, if not the most, it's one of the top 2 or 3 most culturally significant activities in the UK. You have tea. If you can't have tea time, fuck off, right? It's not going to work out well. You can't do that, and you can't go to the pub, and then you can't break a glass over someone's face. All that last part is optional. That's kind of the sprinkling on top. But the first two, if you can't have tea and you can't go to the pub, like, you have no English society, no Scottish society, no Welsh society, no Northern Irish society, whatever. You don't have that. It's such a linchpin of the community that I don't think Americans will ever understand. Even drink-heavy Americans who just love going to craft breweries and stuff. And it's like, hipsters and craft brew. Like, hipsters love to go to craft brewery. People like Greg like to go out and like go to the hipster spots.
Wait a minute. I just want to clarify.
Yes.
Are you calling Greg a hipster?
In a way. But
okay.
He doesn't have to see this. So.
Well, he doesn't listen to podcasts, so we're safe.
Yeah.
Ross might tell him, though. But remember, Ross, snitches get stitches, and don't be a Karen.
Yep, don't get Karen, don't be a narc. So, the way hipsters are with craft brewery is the way UK society as a whole is with the pub, except to a greater degree. And because it's not just you and your hipster friends, it's just like the whole world. It's like, how do you just shut that down? You're just like, virus, like let's not be Brits anymore. And they're just gonna be like, nope, we're gonna keep doing our thing. And of course, speaking of hipsters, the idea of a speakeasy is, back in the day, it's like a password protected pub. Basically, people wanted to keep drinking. It was illegal to do so. So they had a thing where word of mouth, oh yeah, come to this place, say the right word, you get in. And then you just come, say the right word and you go in. And then at some point, alcohol was legalized in the U.S. And then you didn't need a speakeasy. It's just extra. It sounds like drinking with extra steps, right? It's just like, why do you need extra steps? Just give me in, don't put steps in between me and my drink. But then drinking has become so easy that now in the modern hipster era, a bunch of hipsters have come up with the brilliant idea of putting those extra steps back in and have reintroduced the completely unnecessary speakeasy to where, okay, you could go there and just drink, or you could go to this little like hole in the wall thing that doesn't even look like that, and I have to say the secret password. And if you don't get it right, some place will literally put you in a little jail there and just have you like wait until like do all this stuff just to like how did drinking become so boring to some people that they had to make a crazy little game out of it? Yeah, but that's a different rant. But now the prevalence of speakeasies has basically brought back that thing that now is very useful. Now, hey, if you want to have a drink with some friends, you kind of have to do it at home or sneak someone in the back door or whatever like that. But if you want to go out and socialize and things like that, the good old thing, and you just want to go out and have a drink and be around people and not be in your house because you go crazy looking at the same four walls all the time. Now there's a way you can do it. You can find a super secret speakeasy and go out there and, no one can catch you. I mean, unless someone else, there's always, now there's going to be stings. There's going to be speakeasy stings.
Well, they had those back in the 1920s too. I think that's how the FBI was formed, if I remember correctly. I'll have to double check that before somebody else tells me how wrong I am. But they were chasing down these alcohol smugglers and the speakeasy bosses, and because, as it turns out, you can't keep people from drinking.
Yeah.
And it actually made it more dangerous when it was illegal. Hint, hint, marijuana. Hint, hint, other substances, right? It made it more dangerous when they banned it. And not only did it make it more dangerous on the level, because people were, now every alcohol trade was illegal. So there's no, quality controls. There's no major companies that are making it in strict, free market standards where if they do a bad job, they're going to get put out of business or whatever. But now, not only that, but you have these government agents with guns chasing them down. I would say at, high-speed car chases, but I don't know how fast cars went back then, maybe 30.
That's high enough. You got into a wreck and you died instantly, but the car was still intact because there's this big steel block. And it just goes boom, and you get liquefied inside of the car, so you just roll it back over, mop it out, and then you can keep using it. So very different.
The big boat cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and then that gave rise to the mafias and the mobs in inner cities, Detroit, New York, because they controlled the alcohol trade. And so, I mean, none of it doesn't make sense. So I'm glad at least here in New Hampshire, and I think most states, they haven't tried to actually ban the consumption, purchase, or anything of alcohol. And in some cases, they even tried to make it easier for people. Like the liquor stores in New Hampshire are doing curbside pickup, I believe.
Yeah.
Bars and restaurants were all of a sudden allowed to deliver beer and wine as long as it was in its original container and yada, yada, yada. We tried to get some other things going, but it never ended up working out. But at least they didn't say, oh, the liquor store is not essential. I mean, that would have created a huge number of unintended consequences. But at least they didn't try to stop people from drinking, even if they did stop them from drinking in bars.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting to see because there's a lot of reopen initiatives going around. I mean, I believe Texas is going to reopen relatively soon. Florida is, I think, didn't Florida reopen the beaches and such? Like, there's a bunch of things that are happening, and then they get to be guinea pigs for the rest of the world. And well, we're all sit all here all like sad that we're not able to do that. But if you think about it, right now we got a lot of people being funneled into Walmart, and I'm terrified when I have to go to Walmart because it's just full of the most nasty, filthy people possible, and they're everywhere, and they're gonna kill me. And so, I'd much rather go sit in a table 6 to 10 feet away from some other guy in a bar, and just the waitress is squirting down all disinfecting everything like every 5 seconds, and just like, all right, maybe a little bit annoying, but you just sit there with your pint and just maybe. There's still the guy 6 feet there. You're like, hey, so what have you been doing during this whole thing? And you can
people yell in bars anyway, right? So it wouldn't be any louder than normal.
Yeah, and also, like, it's got to be one of the most disinfected atmospheres in the world because of all the alcohol slushing around. Of course, that's an ignorant comment. I'm just trying to be funny. But I'm being pretty sure, pretty soon, these few other things, people want an outlet. They want to go out and have a drink, not just drink at home. They want to go out and have a drink. They want to.
Yeah, well, you want to see your friends.
Yeah, they want to fix.
You want to see somebody in person.
Yeah, they want to fix their hair. Want to fix their nails. Want to just. And the fact that they can't for so long, it's like, all right, we'll not do that for a month or so. But then people are going to start just doing it again in some way. And whether it's openly defying orders by opening the business back up, or whether it's in secret, it's going to start to happen. And then we're going to see like the government do what it does best, which is crack down on innocent people doing nothing wrong. And that's when it's going to become interesting. So you might have, say, some local beloved bar that just opens up and has this whole social distancing plan for like how you're going to have people come in and out. Come in, Purell, go in there. There's Purell on the way in and out of the bathroom. There's like a line. There's like a occupancy thing for each. You must sit this far apart. The bathroom's got to be like one person at a time. You ring the bell to make sure no one's in there. Like, however it works out, someone's going to come up with a genius plan of like, look, this is the safest way. This is safer than just staying at home with your, And then the government's going to shut it down.
The governor put together a task force, and most of those suggestions that you just made were made by the whatever it was, like NHLAR, LRA, something like that. So they gave a presentation last Thursday on how to safely open restaurants, and it was 6 feet apart, follow CDC guidelines, sanitize, masks for servers, masks for cooks, yada yada yada, the whole nine. So, but if that's going to be safe in 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or 10 days, or 5 days, why isn't it safe today? And the answer is, of course, it's safe today. It's no more dangerous than going to Walmart or Market Basket, like you said, where of course, those stores have voluntarily limited their occupancy to, I think Market Basket limited it to half, and they have like duct tape arrows all over the place. Their lanes are one way. They're sanitizing the carts. They have a big duct tape line across the front main aisle to keep people 6 feet back from the register. They have their employees going around, make sure people are following these social distancing guidelines. And of course, they're the best equipped to know what's safest in their buildings in accordance with recommended safety practices and guidelines. But you would never see the government try to shut down a grocery store.
Yeah, because
right?
Then people can't eat, and then people riot, and then they start to kill government officials. Like, it's like that quick. Like, you just tell people they can't eat, and they go for it. Now, if you tell people that most people can't eat, but if you can't make a living anymore because your business got shut down, well, there's some kind of vague promise of assistance, but really, you can't eat. And then those people get mad.
Yeah, but the most disturbing part of this, right? Like, all right, so the government, this is what, 6-7 weeks into this now? Like 6-7 weeks ago. Is this episode 8 of this, actually? Yeah. So it might be the 8th. Who knows? This could be the start of the 8th week of this craziness. Because I think we've talked about it every single episode, which is not really how we wanted to start off a podcast, but it is what it is.
Before you guys think that we were just bored at home and decided to go do this thing, we planned it before there was any rumor of lockdowns and stuff. So
Yeah, we planned it like weeks before. So like COVID wasn't even like a real thing in the United States then. It was just a cough and the sniffles. You could take like a
still
bleach
might
tablet,
be.
a chewable
Depends
bleach
if you
tablet, and
have your
yeah.
tinfoil hat.
So, I mean, 7, 8 weeks ago when this all started, nobody knew any better, right? All we had were a couple models that said it's going to be death and destruction everywhere. It was going to be mayhem. Millions of people were going to die. I think the original projection was like 2.5 million people worldwide were going to die from this. So it was like, okay, this sounds kind of serious. And the government did what governments do, and they came up with this quote unquote solution that, 7, 8 weeks later, now we can look at it and go, well, maybe there was probably a better way to do this.
Yeah.
But it's kind of too late now. And because for weeks we had the media and the CDC and the WHO and public health officials telling everybody that they were going to die if they were outside, now we have a population that is like we talked about, scared of their own shadow. And a lot of people are actually afraid of dying from this virus, or they're afraid that somebody in their family or somebody they're close to will die if they get the virus because they have underlying conditions and all of that. But the death rate from the virus has actually turned out to be very low. And I say this every week because I don't want anybody to take me wrong. The tragedy, any death is a tragedy, right?
Of course.
So the 60 people in New Hampshire that have lost their lives as of the last release, it's a tragedy for 60 people and their families. We're not going to take away from that, right? But this isn't some virus that's going around and killing perfectly healthy people.
Yeah, not usually, no.
It's like a pretty defined at-risk population. The older you are, the more at risk you are. And if you have these certain underlying conditions, the more at risk you are. So for that population, I can understand why you might be a little bit afraid of catching the virus, right?
Yes.
But there are people that are perfectly healthy, that are young, and they're absolutely petrified of getting this virus, or for some reason they think that they're just going to, spread it around to a bunch of people. And so anyways, I'm getting off topic here, but so for 7, 8 weeks, we've been lied to by public health officials. Not necessarily, they didn't do it intentionally at first, I think. But now we have to somehow find the way back towards rational thinking. And if you are an at-risk person, or if you live with somebody that's at risk, or if you're in close contact with somebody that's at risk, then you're going to have to do different things than 15-year-olds just going to high school and then going home with their parents, right?
Yeah. So we also have to remember that there's other ways to die other than getting the coronavirus. And of course those things happen. It's not like saying, well, why, don't turn your nose up at this because other things kill more people. But how about other things how about the people who die in order to protect people from dying from coronavirus? And I'm not in order to, but ostensibly what people would say. So, for example, first off, the healthcare system, a mess, because the hospitals are not full. I mean, as locally here, let's just say before someone says, "Oh, I know okay, whatever." Locally, the hospitals are absolutely not full with coronavirus patients. In fact, hospitals are laying off staff. They're furloughing staff because basically, rather than designate just a few hospitals specifically for COVID cases, it's like now basically everyone, and it's very hard to get regular care. And so my anecdotal evidence is not something I've looked into intensely, but just from people close to me who I know. You cannot go get an endoscopy to see if, say, you have an ulcer or whatever. They just won't see you for at least 2 weeks. You would be able to go in that normally, but now, if you have some serious condition, basically they wait until you're basically dying before you become a super urgent case, and then they'll let you in. Another friend has his cancer treatments have been delayed by several weeks. He could be terminal.
These stories are I mean, it's
Yeah.
anecdotal on your end, but everybody has heard these stories or knows somebody with these stories.
Yeah.
And
And
a data point to back up what you're talking about. We had a new data release from the New Hampshire Employment Security Office last week with a breakdown of unemployment claims by industry. The top three were, the top one was food services and drinking places. That's not a surprise. All the restaurants are closed. Second was administrative and support services. And then third, a very close third, was ambulatory healthcare services. So that's 10,115 number of claims filed in New Hampshire. So that's 10,000 healthcare jobs. And then next one down is social assistance at 6,000 jobs. You go down a couple more, hospitals, almost 5,000 jobs laid off because of. So I mean, it's ironic in a sense. And then if you go down a few more, there's nursing and residential care facilities at 2,300 jobs. So I mean, we're talking about this healthcare crisis that was supposed to overrun the hospitals, but now, I mean, that if you add up all those numbers I just gave you, that's over 20,000, right? So that's 20,000 healthcare workers out of a job in New Hampshire, when a couple months ago, the total unemployment in New Hampshire was like just over 20,000, roughly.
yeah, and with it come all kinds of different problems. Like obviously the healthcare crisis means there's a lot of people who had issues that now won't get care and might be at risk and might die. Then of course you have unemployment and then the depression that comes around with that. You have increase in substance abuse and domestic violence and just overall degradation of health. It's there is a human toll to all of this, and unfortunately, like when we're the biggest human toll. So we'll talk about the biggest one just in a second. But if you don't believe in freedom, if you're just kind of comparing numbers, you cannot. Even in that situation, you cannot say, oh, we want to prevent all these potential coronavirus deaths without weighing in a cold-headed way, the statistical deaths that will likely happen, and just not just in the short term, but also down the line from like long-term effects of poverty and starvation and things like that for the next several years as a result of this. You got to weigh those statistics side by side if you don't care about freedom. The problem is, I do care about freedom, and it's basically the entire reason why, not just in the U.S., but everywhere, so many other places in the world, people went in and started shooting people and getting shot just so they could do things their own way, just so they could have that live free or die, just so they could have something that they could call their own, something they could call their own self-directed life before they don't have a life anymore. And all this, we risk losing this precious freedom forever. And one reason why I've always been so interested in economics is it's sort of the freedom science, because you can actually put down on paper numbers that are associated with why freedom is better than not freedom. And as a result of all these kinds of different restrictions and things like that, we're going to see massive economic downturns, not just for like stimulus type stuff to try to get the economy, or not just the specific lockdown based restrictions, but just restrictions in general. You start getting people being cracked down, afraid to work, afraid to do this kind of stuff in general. It's going to cause ripples and shockwaves through the world, and it's going to claim millions of lives. So
yeah, every economic downturn costs lives, right? So there's no such thing as solutions.
Yeah,
there are only trade-offs, right? So we made a trade-off 7 or 8 weeks ago where we said, all right, we're going to temporarily shut down the economy so that we can flatten the curve, don't overrun the healthcare system. People won't be dying in the streets, because that would be terrible, right? But it was supposed to be temporary, and once we got under healthcare limits, we were supposed to open back up, because that was kind of the whole point of just flattening the curve, right? And we haven't even gotten anywhere near capacity in New Hampshire. Yeah. Right? Even New York hasn't even pushed their capacity. I'm sure some of the hospitals were full, but they were, they sent that U.S. Navy ship there, and they saw 129 total patients in like the 3 weeks they were there. Of course, they were trying to send non-coronavirus patients there. But anyways, there's no solutions only trade. So like you said, now let's say if we open back up everything tomorrow, right? If we turned on the economy like a light switch, or if we flipped the light switch and hoped that the lights turn on, the lights aren't going to just turn on, right? Because if we opened up every restaurant in the state tomorrow, how many of them would be full? Probably very few, right? I can think of one in Manchester, and that would get probably a fair amount of business just because he has a lot of friends in the Liberty community. And I'm sure there's a couple. I think there's one in Concord where the owner is friends, with the Liberty community. So these people would probably more so than others flock right back. But I mean, the general population isn't just going to rush back out to normal, right? They're not going to rush into restaurants until they know that they can feel safe there. They're not going to rush back out to these quote unquote non-essential businesses until they know that that business is going to do stuff that makes them feel safe, right? So if you're going to get your hair cut, you want your barber to wear a mask and gloves or whatever the situation may be. But by and large, people aren't just going to rush back out and get back to life as normal. That's not going to happen anytime soon.
Also, the people at home, do they have any money to spend?
Well, that's another important point, right? I mean, that $1,200 stimulus check from the federal government only goes so far, especially if you buy a new gun with it. Not saying I did that. Not saying I didn't.
Yeah, pleading the fifth. Well, that's the other thing is you can't. It's not an on-off switch. It's like restarting someone's breathing. Right? They stop breathing for a while. You can hold your breath for only so long, after which you pass out, and then you start to get. The longer you're out without oxygen to the brain, the higher the risk of brain damage you get, permanent brain damage. And you can't just like wake a person up. They might be in a vegetative state. They might just never wake up if you just let
Speaking
them
of which, Kim Jong-un might be in a vegetative state, or he might be dead, or he might be alive. He's kind of like Schrodinger's dictator.
Yeah. That is that's one of those things where there's a very human toll and element behind everything happening in North Korea. And I choose to just find the humor in it all, because enough sad things in the world. The fact that guy who's as wide as 3 North Koreans is basically he soaked up all the food that everyone else should have been getting. And the joke is that the doctors there have no idea what it's like to operate on a fat person, so they screwed it up, and that's what happened. But I guess time will tell. Time will tell what actually happened there.
But with that, we are now competing for the same audience as the governor, who just started his press conference.
Yes.
And my battery is about to die, so I think this is a perfect
good time
opportunity
to wrap
this up.
Now, if you haven't before, subscribe either on this channel, whatever it is, Facebook, Twitter, wherever, or on YouTube. Look up Live Free and Rant or the Desert Links. It's on both. Same thing on Library, the lbry.tv. It's the same thing there. Over on this side is the Patreon, Patreon/Live Free and Rant. Throw us a few bucks there. Right up here is the crypto sites, all on Cointree. All crypto donation addresses. Throw something there. If you're watching in the live chat afloat, you can also throw me a few bucks there too. And in general, just keep watching. Stay tuned for next week. It's gonna be a great one. Bye, everyone.